When installing the bearings into the block, there's a tab that you need to line up within the block. Make sure the grooved section with the hole for the oil is also in the block. The one used on the bearing cap does not have a groove or a hole. Now you line up the tab, and what you're trying to do is press this in, not hard, just press it in, and then make sure that the top of both sides are even between the bearing and the block. You can move it around a little bit with your thumbs. So the hole, you need to be able to see down the hole into the oil passages. Now for the rear main, what we end up doing here again is finding the tab and the gap or the hole in the block. Make sure that your hole, which is offset, it's not at the bottom, is lined up as well. I don't know if you can see it in this view, but it's right there. And then you do the same thing. Just line it up and then press it in. Make sure nothing's... So a little harder. It's a bigger bearing. All right, I'm going to back that out. For the bearing caps, the half bearing, as you can see, does not have any grooves in it or holes in it. Again, line up the tab and just press it in. And as you can see, I didn't get it exactly lined up here. All I have to do is push on it and it'll rotate. Yeah, now I gotta do it the other way. Okay, that's pretty well aligned. It will self-adjust a little bit. I want it to get as close as possible so it doesn't move around too much. I do want to be able to measure the gap using that good old stuff. So if it does move, it'll kind of screw up the measurement. All right, so now that is going to go. Gotta be careful not to scratch it, and then we're done there. For the rear main cap, it also was a little bit of a struggle to get this on. What I ended up doing is taking the bolts out, putting it on the workbench, and then just put my weight down on top of it, and it popped right in. So no issue there at all. Okay, so I'm going to put this in here for now. All right, next step is I'm going to go and do a pre-measure of the journals on the crank and record that information. Check to see if it is actually 10 under. And then we'll use the plastic gauge to see, actually I'll use the green stuff. I'll use plastic gauge to check the clearances. For the main bearings, I used the Clevite, Moly Clevite 10 over. Part number is MS909A-10. It's time to measure the crank journals and the rod journals. I've got a measuring device here, and it's 2-inch to 3-inch. I've also got the standard to just do the self-check to make sure it's reading correctly, and I've got my data collection form. So I'm going to be measuring the rod journals. There's 5 of them, and I'm going to be measuring the rod journals, and there's only 4 of them. Each rod, there's 2 rods per each journal. So I'll measure the journal rod, then I'll measure the individual clearances using the plastic gauge. For the diameter for the main bearing, at 10 under, it should be 2.44 with a Yeah, and then when it comes to the plastic gauge, for the low tolerance of the clearance, it should be 0.0018 or high tolerance of 0.0024. For the rod bearings, low tolerance is 0.0016 and high tolerance is 0.0021. I want to thank my friend Don for letting me borrow his gauge set. Thanks a lot, Don. I appreciate it. Okay, so what I've got it set at right now is at 2.000, and if I turn this, now it's at 2.005, 2.0010. I'm going to be verifying against the standard, which is 2.000, but I wanted to open it up enough so I'm not damaging the any of the parts here. So I'm going to put it in, and then I'm going to verify this comes out to 0. I want to make sure it's straight and not cockeyed. It's a little easier when I'm not doing it in front of a camera, as always. Yeah. Yep, so it's showing at 2.000, so we're good. All right, so I'm going to set this up. I'll do one rod and then one main bearing, and then I'll to demonstrate, and then I'll do all the rest and show you what the measurements were. Again, the way this, I just want to be clear on this. The way this is set up, what you've got in each one of these is how do I explain this? So let me pull this off here. So this, when I get to 0 here, the first, so it's 2.10. This is 2.105, 2.110, 2.115, 2.112. So you get the idea, and then everything in between, so that would be 2.121, 2.124. Okay, so this goes to three digits, and you can get sort of the half digit. If it's kind of in the middle, you can kind of guesstimate a little bit. Okay, so the way this gauge works is each of the large numbers on the shaft here indicate tenths of an inch. So 0 would be, this is a this gauge is 2 to 3 inches. So the 0 denotes 2.000, and the 1 here indicates 2.100. Now, there are 4 marks in between 0 and 1. So the first mark between 0 and 1, the one that's facing downward, is 0.025. The one in the middle that goes through both, up and down, is 2.050, and the third one is 2.075. So if we are to get an unground crank, the rod will be 2.1. So the 0 would line up like this. Now if we get a 1 thou under, we're going to work off of the next major. There it is right there. Now that's 2.075, And to get a 2.09, we're going to rotate this until this is 15. All right, so the 15 mark means 2.075 plus 0.015, which equals 0.9. So that's what we're looking for with the rod bearing. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to back this off a bit so I'm not scraping the journal, and we'll take a look at what that looks like. All right, this is the number 4 journal, rod bearing journal, and I've increased the size of this by a little bit. And what I'm going to do is put this down here, and then I'm going to rotate that. Hopefully I got it relatively centered. And I'm just going to rotate it in, and then there's a thumb screw because I don't want to scratch the journal. That would be bad. And then I got a thumb screw at the end here just to... Okay, so let's take a look at what the reading is here. So the 1.5 is right on. So to 3 decimal places and to the accuracy of this gauge, the machine shop nailed it. Nice. Okay. Now we'll do the journal. For the crank journal reading, what we're looking for is the first degradation, which is so it's 2.425, and we're going to be adding 15 to get to 40, so 2.440. So 15 and 25 is 40, and that's what we're looking for, 440. Okay, this is the rear main bearing, and what we're looking at here is I'm trying to get, again, to 2.44, and that will show as a 15. Okay, so as I'm going to back this off so I have some room to move this in here, and then I'm going to search for the biggest diameter and remain as parallel or perpendicular to the surface I'm measuring as I can. Okay. All right. So what I came up with, if you can see that, there it is. So it's 2.425 plus 14. So 14 and 25 is 39. So I'm 1/1000th under on that one. Not too bad. All right, here are the results for the journal, main journal. I was at 2.439 all the way across, so very consistent. And for the rod, I was for the 4 rod journals, 2.090, so right straight across. So I gave up a thou here on a low tolerance of, it's going to be, I basically gave up a thou on a 3 thou or a 2.5 thou. So we'll see. We'll see how this all works out. The rods, not so worried about. Before putting the crank into the bearings, I used some assembly lube. I don't intend to have to take the crank out again, but I put it in the lower shells. Now, on each of the bearings, you can see I put a piece of plastic gauge on each of them. These are just the mains, so they're all in place. I'm going to put all of the caps on and torque them to spec, and then remove them to see what the reading says. Okay, for the main bearings, low tolerance is clearance of 0.0018 and a high tolerance is 0.0024. I know this is kind of so I've got all the bearing caps lined up, 1 in the front and 5 in the back, and there is some variation in the thicknesses, 5 being the smallest, and it looks like maybe number 3 is the biggest. I torqued number 3 up first, and then I went to number 2, number 4, number 1,